Coming up on today's edition, I have an intro thing that I got to get there. To the Art Marketing Podcast, we are back with another artist interview. Really excited about this one. I've got basically my neighbor, okay, in Scott Westmoreland, lives just up the street from me. Scott, how are you doing? Welcome to the podcast. Really thrilled to have you.
Great, Patrick. As we talked about being in Orange County, California, there's never a bad day, man.
Never a bad day. It has been beautiful out here recently. So I told Scott before this goes that I prepared a bio. You probably haven't seen the show, but I don't ever do like in-depth bios. I always ask like the guest to introduce themselves. But I wanted to do an in-depth bio because I'm working on a new system, and I think this is totally interesting. You definitely have to call out anything that's squirrely on this because I want to know about my things. But okay, so Scott Westmoreland is a Southern California-based artist who embodies the entertainment industry to fine art transition narrative, a sophisticated career evolution from high-level corporate entertainment work to establishing a distinctive brand in coastal lifestyle art. At 60 years old, he represents the Disney entertainment legacy generation that build foundational skills in commercial illustration before pivoting to independent fine art careers. And this thing goes on. Talks about you being educated at Cal State Fullerton, art degree, 1991, drawing since the age of 2, documenting baseball players, Spider-Man and Batman, banana splits. You were a professional performer, an entertainment industry designer, a Disney staff artist. And you had the Disney position, it said from 1996 to 2001, creating campaigns for Michael Eisner. That's really cool. I got to ask you about that. You were doing theater poster design. Your background in terms of like everything that it's just spread is crazy. In terms of artistic style, it is realism with a stylish flair, rich color palettes, and uplifting themes. Beach, surf culture, vintage woody cars, tropical landscapes, pinup aesthetics. Your cultural reference point, which obviously I love and resonate with, 1960s California surf culture in the golden age. Technical approach would be clean commercial illustration technique with warm, vibrant color palettes. I loved all that. Crazy lifestyle, the licensing deals that you've done, over 50 licensed products, including calendars, puzzles, wall murals, clocks, 3D sculptures, coasters. You've had publisher partnerships with Sagebrush Fine Art, Greg Young Publishing. You're now getting into direct sales. What do you think of that? It goes on and on and on. Pretty accurate, somewhat accurate?
Yeah. As far as the Disney, I worked as kind of the eye candy artist for the main designers and show directors and that stuff on projects. So at Disney, I did a lot of like collector edition lithographs and worked with marketing and merchandise and all that stuff too. But like I call it like my day job. A lot of the time, most of the time I was doing sort of the magic art for trying to sell, projects.
Amazing.
So I would work with the designers and we would try to make it as magical as possible so that they threw their money behind it. So it was a lot of conceptual stuff too, a lot of design work and conceptual.
So how good was that for your chops coming up? I mean, doing that much work all the time, like storyboarding and conceptual and pitch decks and all of that.
You know what? I've done it all, and I teach it all at Orange County School of the Arts as well. I teach everything from, lettering, logos, and branding to fine art to, just kind of everything. So I've been everywhere, man, because I'm old.
Been everywhere, man. Great song. I would love to, like, there's so many different areas that we can go. Choose your own adventures episode here, but I would love to. When did you first start selling your art, and what was the paradigm at that point in time when you did? So you're old school.
So here's the story. As quickly as I can do it. I told you I had been a performer, so I'd been on tour with the Broadway show for like a year. Okay. And I left the show and came home and kind of decided at that point at 25 years old that I wanted to, stay in one place, because the only time I was being really successful in making a living as a performer was being on the road with musicals, living out of a suitcase. So I was living in an apartment at the time. I remember it was a pouring rainy day, and I felt so depressed because I was like, hey, I'm giving up my showbiz career, but the other thing I do really well is visual art. And I had my degree from Cal State Fullerton as an artist, so at least I had that going for me. And I remember just laying on the couch, not to be too transparent, but I was laying on the couch just like in the fetal position, kind of going, what am I going to, everyone gets to that point where like, what am I going to do with my life type of thing.
Yeah.
And and one of those Tony Robbins infomercials came on, and he was talking about, don't lay there expecting the world to ring your phone and knock on your door. Figure out what you do really well, figure out what you love to do, and create it as if the world had asked you to do it. Then take the finished product out into the world and say, well, anybody think they can use me? This is what I can do. So I did that. I had this big background in theater and in show business and stuff. And so I created a poster. I figured out there was an old professional theater company called Long Beach Civic Light Opera, and they were doing Little Shop of Horrors with Dom DeLuise.
Love it.
So I thought, okay, that's coming up in like 6 months. They probably don't have the advertising art yet. So I'm going to, and we didn't have internet, so I couldn't just pull up a picture of Dom DeLuise. I literally drove to Hollywood, bought an 8x10 glossy at some little corner store, and came home and designed this painting of Dom DeLuise, in Little Shop of Horrors with like the vine of, the plant wrapped around his helmet and stuff like that. He was wearing like a pith helmet or something like that in the photo.
Okay.
And I took it to Long Beach, and I walked in and I said, can I see your marketing director? And they were like, oh, sure. And the guy comes out, and I said, what do you think of this? Patrick, he went, oh my gosh, that's our poster. Are you here to pitch it? And I was like, yes. And all of a sudden I went from laying on a couch going, what am I going to do? And I told this story to Tony Robbins because I ended up knowing him a little bit and going to all his seminars and stuff. It was great. So I was able to tell him the story and stuff. And so that's kind of how it happened. And then one thing, then you have to produce something. You can't just say, hey, I'm a great artist and blah, 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 or I got my degree in art. You have to do it. Don't wait for the world. Make your world. So that's what I did. And I just, from then on, I just started getting all these art jobs. And I had a lot of contacts because I had been in show business. So, so I'd call them and say, I'm not here for an audition, but I'm an artist now. And so can I meet with you? And they were always willing to meet because they knew me. And so that's what happened. And I just kept doing theater posters. And I don't know if you want me to go on from there, but then like my brother was working for Disneyland at the time, and he said, hey, you should get, you should interview Disney art department. And I was like, oh, Disney, yeah, they're not going to want me. And he's like, no, I know, I'm connected, man. So he got me with the right person, and I got a call and I got an interview. I think it was a Friday, and I got an interview for Monday. And that weekend, instead of going to the beach, I did this painting of like a bunch of characters and all around the castle and stuff like that. And I walked into the Disney interview and showed it to them. Same scenario. They were like, wait a minute, did you do that for us? And I was like, no, I just did it this weekend at home. And they said, literally, when can you start? And that's that was it, man. That's just kind of how it went.
Wow. Did you, just out of curiosity, so that whole body of work before you got into selling wall art and commercially, and that's, I'm going to get into that next, but how did they handle rights back then? Did you retain rights to everything? Are you still able to sell some of that stuff? Or is it like nothing? And you didn't even photograph most of it, right? Or did you?
No, I have stuff. I have photographs for sure. And then I've got a lot of product because like I did the 45th annual pass ticket, and I did lots of, lithographs and, special edition, stuff that they sold in the stores and, in the galleries and all that stuff. So I have that. But yeah, Disney's really protective of, you're a working person for the machine. You're not, they're a little bit more lax now with Disney Fine Art, and, they're granting some independence with their artists and a little bit of fame and recognition with people like that. But I was there a long time ago when they really didn't, it was really all about, the company, of course. So, but I took, gosh, what I got out of it, I was there 10 years total. I met my wife there. I, learned so much from my colleagues there. Just, my color palette is very, saturated and vibrant, and that's kind of like where I learned that. And so I'm very grateful for the time that I spent there, and just, I don't know, especially and a confidence booster, because you get, when you leave for whatever reason, you go out into the world, and the one thing you can say is, well,
I worked at
Most
Disney.
recently been a Disney artist for a decade, and all of a sudden the door opens and you're in, you know.
Amazing. So how old are you when you're transitioning out of Disney and going out on your own out there?
I was 30, let's see, early 30s.
Early 30s.
Yeah, I would say probably 33, maybe.
Got it. Yeah. And so
You
where
want me to go on? Should we
yeah,
just go on?
yeah, totally. I'm curious. What I'm most curious about is that like the paradigm is completely shifted for how art sells, right? In your day, it was the older paradigm, right? And
Yeah.
back then, it was either get into a gallery or make it in art fairs or have a service-based business, kind of sort of like you did, the equivalent of a servant-based business. So I'm curious, back then, 27 years ago, when you transitioned out of Disney, like what was the art selling landscape like then? And what did you immediately do in terms of how you were selling your art?
Gosh, you know what? I wasn't really aware. I mean, I've been in galleries and stuff like that,
Mhm.
obviously, but like I was more about just the work. Like I was a huge fan of Drew Struzan doing all the movie posters and
Mhm.
got to know him a little bit through working at Disney on projects and stuff like that. And so I just literally tried to make my stuff look as good as his as I possibly could, and not just Drew. There were other people. I mean, I love Norman Rockwell.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. My heroes are like the old illustrators, J.C. Leyendecker, and those pioneers of that Hollywood style that's just so popular and so good. So yeah, I really just kept thinking, how am I going to take that style and bring it to like the fine art world type of
Mhm.
thing. So when I launched out on my own, I uh, unsuccessfully, did some kind of Rockwell looking stuff and
Mhm.
whatever. And people were like, "Oh, wow, that's really cute," but I wasn't burning the house down with sales or anything like that. And I met a guy at a framing gallery in Huntington Beach. Shout out to Ed Armstrong, who used to own Armstrong and Haugen Framing
Okay.
in Huntington. And he said, "Gosh, you're so talented." He goes, "You know what you ought to do?" He goes, "Those Woody car shows that
Mhm.
are so famous all up and down the coast." Again, I'm like, yeah. Where I'm thinking no, but I'm thinking.
No, but yeah.
Um, he said, "Yeah, you should go to some of those shows and just photograph the cars. They're sitting in lots and stuff, but you're a designer and an artist. You can put them into tropical, like Hawaiian or beach
Mhm.
settings." And so that's what I did. All those paintings that you're looking at, those were just photographs in parking lots at car shows, and I literally put them into, um, you know. Um, fantasy locations.
Yeah.
It's funny when I would do shows, people would say, "Oh, I know exactly where that is." And I would think, "You do?" Because it really lives in my head. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
love
yeah, I
that.
would just take pictures of waves and trees and whatever I could.
Mhm.
And then the other thing was, I'll show you this. This is the famous. This is my most famous piece. Starting lineup: colored surfboards against the fence.
Love it.
Again, Ed Armstrong said, "Hey, why don't we do?" He was kind of art directing me because he knew about art sales because he was a framer, one of the
Mhm.
top framers in the country. And he said, "What would go really huge is colored surfboards leaning up against a fence." So I did it, and bam, that was crazy. Because then he said, "Okay, we got to get you with a publisher." So he called Sagebrush. By the time I left Huntington Beach and got home, there was a message on my machine from the president and owner of Sagebrush saying, "Dude, dude," and so I signed with them, and then it was like, "Let's do a calendar." And then Patrick, but here's the rub. That world, the artist gets paid last.
Yeah.
Pennies on the dollar.
Pennies on the dollar.
That's why I'm here with you, my friend.
I know. But everything changes. In many ways, it's a good thing though, because the artist should own all of it. But back then, like, what were the terms of that deal? So you were last out money, but like, what percentage of each sale would you even get in a licensing modality?
Okay, well, I'm going to speak in general industry terms because
Mhm.
I'm not going to call out my
For sure,
specific
for sure.
contract
I
with
love it.
anybody, but kind of the industry terms were about 6 to 8% of wholesale with the licensing. Okay.
Oof. Ugh.
Then you had to split that 50-50 with the agent. So literally you were getting 50% of 6% of wholesale.
Yeah.
You got to sell a lot of stuff, which I did. I had some, I won't get into it, but man, thank God I had some unbelievable years, about 6 years, 5 or 6 years of just crazy. And then I was getting in galleries, you know, and I was shifting more towards a fine art. Then it was like, okay, well, let's do some, I love Christian Reese Lassen. Shout out to the old tried and true Christian Reese Lassen and Weiland.
Yeah.
And just, I loved that whole, you know, dolphins and sea
Beach
life
vibe,
and
yeah,
Guyana and all
beautiful
stuff.
ocean, yeah.
So that got me into actually Michael Goddard and Weiland galleries. And then then again, branched off. So you're constantly reinventing yourself, trying to, you know, say, well, where does this naturally flow to? Where does my subject matter? And my interest, you know, you have to paint what gets you up at 6 a.m, eager to chain yourself to your drafting table, and then have your wife call you at 10:15 going, honey, you better know,
what are you
need to
doing?
stop. You know what I mean? You have to love it and you have to do it. So that's what I did. I moved on to kind of the Hawaiiana thing. And
yeah, and I was just trying to get the monitor properly set up so I could show off some of it. I mean, Paradise.
Yeah, well, if you go to the tropical on my website, if you go to the tropical section, that's going to show kind of where it went from there.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, everybody loves Paradise.
Yeah, you know, and I took several trips there, you know, wrote it off, took as many pictures as I could, and
just classic Hawaiian art for sure.
Yeah.
Looks like Kaanapali right there. Some beautiful ones in here. I mean, we were talking offline that and by the way, this one totally channels. Was it Greg Norman? Is that what it was when he was standing outside of Waimea waiting to go ride the giant wave?
Oh, Greg Knoll?
Greg Knoll. What did I say? Greg Norman.
Yeah. With the longboard and stuff.
Yeah. It's you know, the reason I'm pressing you on the licensing arrangement is like the generation today doesn't even know the way that it was back then, right? And in my opinion, how insanely exploitative it was for the artists, right? They had all the keys to like the kingdom, right? Like they owned the distribution. Your only shot was go out and do fairs and shows or get into galleries or work with art publishers, right? And I still to this day like see people like, how can I get signed up with an art publisher? It's like, are you sure you want to? Right? Are you sure you want to?
Yeah, I didn't know, you know, like you said, I didn't know. I went with where the interest was.
Yeah.
And it happened so fast and my stuff got so big, you know, globally, that there was years where the bulk of my income was from infringement lawsuits because everyone was taking my stuff and just ripping me off. I mean, I was the most ripped off coastal artist on the planet, I'm sure. And so you also have to be protective of that. Not only the publisher and the licensing and having access to everything, but like just people just taking it and just, you know, they would either literally take my image and just slap it on their, you know, whatever it was, or they would have somebody copy it that was so close that, you know, that it was deemed non-transformative. I mean, it was taking dollars out of my pocket to compete against my own stuff. So
this was the one time. This was the one time where it was helpful to have licensee or to be in a licensee relationship because they're on the hook for the legal department, right? And they have the legal department, and they will go after that money all day long.
Yeah, and I got copyright, you know, VA certificates, you know, from Washington D.C. for everything, and that wasn't cheap either. You know, you're already in the hole. It used to be like $50 back then to get, you know, a certificate of, you know, of copyright. It's probably more now. But yeah, but you know what? I was lucky because the publishers are good about that because they're protecting themselves as well. So they were really, really good about that. And they showed me the ropes and held my hand the whole way through all of that when that kind of was happening. So, you know, and I was lucky, I had great, Greg Young and Mike Singleton at Sage Press were wonderful to me, and they were good friends of mine at the time and all that stuff. So I was lucky because I came across some crooks, as you can imagine. When you're out there and everybody wants a piece of success.
And there's lots of them. What in terms of the nature of the licensing agreements, did they have like long expirations on them? Like, we're going into this agreement for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or they don't care? It's like, if it's selling, we're in business. If it's not selling, we're done, right?
Some of them were like a year. Some of them were 3 years, but they always would say, with the option to renew. So I still have probably 30 licenses from, way long ago.
Yeah.
So yeah. And they, they talk about product exclusivity, and, they talk about geography exclusivity, or whatever. And that's all built into the agreements and stuff. But, like I said, I had licensing agents that handled all that. I just created and sign here. Okay.
Yes. Which by the way is every single solitary artist's dream, right? That's why the relationships work, because I laugh about this, and I always make like a joke, because I'll run these webinars and I'll have 30 artist faces staring at me, and I'll be like, by a show of hands, how many of you just want to create all day and have somebody else take care of everything else? Every single solitary hand in the room.
Absolutely.
Right?
Even right now with, setting up my relationship with you guys, my wife has been pretty much handling a lot of just the busy stuff. And I've been a kid in a candy store. I get to go, and I've been creating like crazy. This fountain series is kind of my new series. That's Splashes of Aloha. And there's a couple other ones that I've done that you can see on my site. Again, I was like, well, what's the next step? And I thought, I love water fountains. They're so peaceful. So I'm going to create fountains in each of these instead of a car in a tropical, locale. Yeah. I'm going to create a fountain, that's themed, because I'm all about theming, And I'm so happy. I have a pool. You can't see it, but I turn on the, the sheet flows in the cascade in the pool. I turn on a little bit of like Hawaiian music or whatever,
and you're in your zone. You're in your happy place,
dude. That puts me in that room all day long. My dog lays in the chair in back of me, and just he's happy. And so it's been great. But I'm excited to with my relationship with Art Storefronts, because taking control of my subject matter and my pricing, and kind of reintroducing, because I'm probably familiar to millions of people who've bought my stuff and know my stuff, but they don't know me. And I didn't get access, obviously, to any of the contacts that I accumulated all over all those years.
Here comes the heartbreaking question, you guys. An artist that worked at Disney, an artist that was an actor, an artist that sold through licensing arrangements and galleries. And, he's being modest in terms of the sheer volumes of pieces of art that he sold. Hey, Scott, how many emails do you have on your list?
I don't even want to say, because it's.
No, I already know. It was a rhetorical question. I know.
I mean, maybe a couple hundred, but we're talking about.
I know.
Tens of thousands of people that know who. I get emails from Italy. Hey, you're my favorite artist. And I'm doing my college final senior project on you. I'm like, what? But I don't know how. I have a website that does have contact information, but
you didn't pick up on the subtlety. But the point that I was making that is so heartbreaking for me, I've been doing this for 10 years and in the trenches, helped so many artists deeply understand the nature of this business, right? And I think it used to be during COVID, like right around COVID, I was running 3 webinars a week, and then that went on for a couple of years. Now I'm down to 1 webinar a week. But the sheer number of artists that are in later seasons of life, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that sold so incredibly well back in the day, and yet did not retain any way to contact their collectors, any way to get in touch with them, any way to continue to market to them and continue to message them. And then you look at where their career is versus where it could have been, and it's like the biggest heartbreaking thing. And it's the biggest condemnation of the entire business model that is the gallery model, that is the publishing model. Like, it's all well and good. You still get some mailbox money, but let me tell you, if you had even 10% of your original purchasers on an email list, your business would be 50 times the size it is. I mean, you look at
nobody had emails because we didn't have a computer.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had a phone number or an address.
Yeah, you would have had a snail mail address. But the larger point is not like the form of contact. It's just that you don't know. You don't know who's purchasing it. Like, one of did you read Weiland's book, by the way? I mean, it's not that you would need to
I
read
have
it.
not read the book, no.
Do you know what I'm talking about, though? He wrote this book, Don't Be a Starving Artist. It's so good.
I've heard of it, yeah. I haven't read it, but
it's so good. But, the interesting thing that guy's done is control his entire destiny the entire time, right? Direct distribution. I own all my customers. And, he talks at great lengths about how valuable collectors are to him. A collector to him is someone that buys more than 7+ pieces over the course of a lifetime. And he's got a lot of them, right? And it's like the path. My biggest argument why we advocate the way that we do is the path to a profitable art business career. An art career is the collector phenomenon, right? Is
Sure.
having a way to continue to message these folks going forward and in the years to come, because once they love you, it's a bond. They love you and it won't go away, and it's not going away,
And not just your work, but you as a person,
100%.
to get, like, I'm super happy and grateful to be on here with you because hopefully, a little bit of who I am and my energy and my passion, comes through. And yeah, because they buy the artist too. They buy the artist and the work. So
I think it's 50-50.
Yeah.
I think it's 50-50. Like one of the things that, like, I constantly have to give my disclaimers. I've talked to so many artists and photographers. Okay. I know them like the back of my own hand, right? Like, everyone's like, they come to us first at art storefronts and they're like, oh, so you have huge list of collectors and huge list of emails that you're going to send our work to? And I try to explain to them, no one has those lists. And even if someone had those lists, it wouldn't help you, because the art sale is 50-50. It's 50% of meritocracy on the quality of the work. And it's 50%, do I like this artist? What do I have in common with them? Are they a cat person or a dog person? Right? What do they like to do on week? It's that bond that creates the sale. And so thinking that there's some sort of list that you're going to magically get on, it wouldn't do you anything, because you haven't had a chance to form the bond. Yeah. I'm dying to pivot because I have a very pointed question to ask.
Okay.
How long have you been teaching art? Tell me about the college, and then I want to ask you something about the university at large.
Okay, first of all, it's a high school. It's a junior high and high school. Yeah, it's one of the most acclaimed art conservatory schools in the country. It's called Orange County School of the Arts, also known as OSHA.
OSHA. Okay.
It's in Santa Ana. Mm-hmm. It's like a college, though, in that it's like like the campus is spread out over like 4 city blocks on Main Street in Santa Ana. Big, tall industrial buildings. It's not like a school. And it's been around, since I was probably 23 years old, around maybe earlier. It's been a long time. Wow. I've been there. I'm going into my 9th year there. Started off really modest. Artists are kind of like, they live in a cave or a vacuum. I was a lonely guy. Everyone was at work and out of the house, and peace and quiet only goes so far. You kind of need human contact. So
for sure you do.
My cousin, whose daughter was going there at the time, said, hey, would you ever consider teaching? There's an opening at Orange County School of the Arts. And I was like, yeah, it'll get me out, it'll get me out in the fresh air and meeting people. And I love, I love the idea of, passing it on.
Amazing.
Jump starting kids who would never have exposure. That's what's so great about the school, is that the staff's all industry professionals. So you're getting like a private lesson.
Yeah, I can't believe it's a high school, because even when I just read the title and I didn't know about it, which was wild, I'm like, oh, that sounds like Laguna Beach College of the Arts, right? And I mean, like, it sounds like a college. So is it everybody in that school artists?
Of some kind. There's lots of different conservatories. There's musical theater, there's, music, there's culinary, there's visual arts, there's, all that stuff. So it's during the day, and it's a full-on public charter school. And so, the instruction is from like 8:30 in the morning till about 1:30 in the afternoon. And that's the academic. And then you go to conservatory for like about 3 hours.
Wow.
And so what I do there is I'm actually a guest academic instructor during the day. Fancy word for sub. So I'll go and I'll do that. And then in the afternoon, I have my 2 conservatory blocks. And I teach 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, almost everything, all the way up to juniors and seniors in high school. And so it is junior high and high school put together.
Wow, what an amazing thing. Let me ask you the point of question I wanted to.
Sure.
I bet there's classes there on art history. I bet you learned about all the masters and the epochs and the eras.
Yes.
And I bet you learn to paint. And I bet you get better at painting. And then you, again, studying all the techniques. How many classes in that institution teach you how to actually monetize a talent through marketing?
Okay, so here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing I'm there. No, there's a conservatory called Arts and Enterprise, which is all about turning your talent, your knowledge, your passion of whatever discipline you like into business opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
That's a conservatory, and I teach in that. So that's where I teach
Amazing.
like branding, logo design, you know, all that stuff. I'm actually teaching a class next year that I'm super excited about, and that's like it's coupled with production and design, and it's, you know, all those years that I did working on, you know, parades and shows and you know, things like that with Disney. I'm actually going to teach people how to conceive and develop like theme park shows, parades, you know, all that stuff. So these kids are learning stuff. And then I teach about, like, I have one little section, it's not a whole class, but I call it the gallery game. And I talk about, you know, getting your slicks together and your little, you know, things, and then reaching out, and then what to expect, and, you know, all about, you know, keystoning and framing and blah, 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 you know, all the little jargon things and all the little intricacies of being in. Because at one time I was in lots of galleries that kind of went away in about 2008, unfortunately. There was a gallery in, you know, on every street corner, and
no, the number's got to be. I feel like I need to see like a market study on that, on like how many galleries starting in 2000, and then in COVID was the absolute kill shot. I mean, the ones that were struggling and hanging on, it was like half of them. Boom. I mean, gone.
Patrick, I used to call it the octopus, man. I used to, so I had commissioned from about 2003 to about 2008, those 5 years in there, I just had the octopus going. I had commissions. I had print sales where I was, you know, doing appearances at, like, you know, Prints Plus and, you know, things like that in malls. I had galleries. I was in probably a dozen galleries, from Vegas to San Francisco to Tahoe to, you know, right here in, you know, Southern California, all over the place. Gary's Island was a great source for me. That was one of my best.
Love Gary's Island.
I had lots of stuff in Gary's Island, and I would sell several paintings, if not a month, a week. Out of Gary's Island. So I was jamming. Problem was,
I've seen your, I remember seeing, now I'm like doing the flashback. Like I go into my closet and grab a Hawaiian shirt I got at Gary's Island, you know, like I know I saw your work in there. I'm sure you did. In there all the time.
Yeah, it was great. Of course, there was a big expense. And my atelier was Harvest Productions, started by John and Marianne Doe, and they kind of pioneered the giclée. Yeah. So when the giclée came into, and I just literally roll out of bed and, you know, do about 8 rolls, and I'm down there at Harvest. And of course I got my framing and my giclées, and I could sign and number and drop ship and all that stuff. And it was a machine. I mean, I was cranking. It was expensive because you're paying, you know, lots of money for top quality, you know, framing and all that stuff. But the gross looked super good.
looked real nice.
Yeah,
and then, I love to just to stop you for a second. The octopus was the happiest thing. Like I have a line which is like, I've never met a revenue source for creatives that I don't like, as long as it's legal. You know, like having the revenue diversity is so important, and that doesn't happen overnight. You have to cultivate it and work on everything you can. And Lord knows, like, it's so hard to make it today's day and age as an artist. If you can get even one tentacle of the octopus working, you're ahead by half, right? You're already winning.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
To the extent that you can get more, it's so powerful.
I would wake up and say, okay, what's the best use of my time today? Should I focus on creating licensing pieces, or should I do a fine art piece, or should I finally get to that commission of somebody's grandmother that they wanted for the birthday or whatever? You know, I literally, that's when the artist is just, you know, at their total full functioning, is when they have choices with their day, and they know everyone is not fruitless. Everyone's going to lead to some sort of income, some sort of something. So yeah, that was great. I'm getting chills just thinking about that, actually.
Yeah.
It was so fantastic. And I want to get back as close as I can get to that again.
Absolutely. And like, look, this is the other thing that's like so astounding to me. And all of this stems from just how many reps and sets with artists that I've had. But I routinely get people in their 80s and 90s on the webinars, and it just has to do with the creative gifting where you're not turning it off. You are not going to stop creating. The desire to keep creating and ultimately get the validation from selling just does not go away. And I bring that up under the context, like, I love digital marketing. I think I'm pretty good at it. When it's my time to retire, I will move into getting really, really good at cooking. Okay. And I'm already good at it. I'm not going to be doing digital marketing anymore, but that is just not the way that it works with the creative gifting. You guys never stop. And what's important to say about that is, like, you've had this huge, storied, successful career, so much revenue and everything else. You're like, I'm 60. I should be getting to retirement age. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Now is the time to double down harder than ever, because you probably at least have a 20-year span where you could be selling and crushing, right? Like, according to the numbers, 25 years is a long time. That's a long time, right? So don't stop. Don't stop taking it seriously. Like, you got plenty of runway to start building momentum.
Yeah, you talked about, you read my bio at the beginning, and I talked about, being literally starting creating and artwork when I was 2 and could hold a pencil. It's true. Like, how I would spend my Saturday is laying on my stomach on a pillow in the family room with a pencil or crayons or markers or whatever, and doing art. And that is my joy. That is my passion. That is all that stuff. And so, of course, I'll never stop doing that. And also, I think I'm a very, very spiritual person. And I think, like, as we're talking energy and stuff, creativity is just this entity in itself. And so that's branched off for me into performing, singing, writing. I've written a novel, all that stuff. It just, designing, teaching art, so I'm not worried about that. I do hope that my dexterity, when I'm 80 or whatever, is still decent, because I know that physically, for what I do, I'm very detail-oriented. I just hope that, just all of that remains intact and sharp and all that stuff. But you have to, I guess, you haven't asked me this, but I'll share this. I think it's so important. You have to love it, have fun, don't get worried. If you don't want to show your art to people, then don't show it or don't try to sell it or whatever. But, like, the fact that it comes from somewhere in the ether and it comes into your soul and it just comes right out your fingertips is magical. It's just absolutely magical. So do it and love it and treat it as a cathartic, meditative, gratitude exercise for just being able to do it. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. It's amazing too. And it's like, what a gift it is to have that desire and want to do that and know you're going to do it for the rest of your life, because you're never going to be one of those people that retires and lacks purpose, and doesn't know what to do with their day. Right. Like, are these people that retire, and I'm thinking of someone in my mind that's going to go nameless, and they should be done. And that he just keeps coming into the office.
Right. And what do they say? People die within 3 to 5 years of retirement.
Yes. Yeah. The purpose, it's like the purpose is so important. And if you've got the purpose and revenue, you're going to be way more motivated. Right. So
absolutely. And that's not just with art. It's anything. Like, I can't do electrical or all these wonderful trades and talents that people have that I wouldn't even touch. But whatever it is, find out what it is that just really juices you, and just do it,
Just do it. It's so true. Oh, is it so true? So in all of this, how the heck did you find us? I always ask, because I'm a marketer. It's my job. I got to know.
Actually on Facebook, I think, I worked with a guy named Sean McDonald, Sean Mack. He was a rep for Harvest and stuff. And so I was on or I was scrolling, I don't know, but it said, likes or follows Art Storefront. So I was like, well, if Sean likes it and follows it. I'd been thinking of doing a new website. I had an old antiquated website that I had a webmaster. So, and it had paintings up to about, 2012 in it. I hadn't touched it. It was just, I'm off teaching art and doing my thing and whatever. And so I wasn't even paying attention to that part of my life. And then it popped up and I said, oh, I should check this out. I think I watched some videos and went, wow, that's really cool. And I love the feature of being able to put it up on a wall, whatever room you want, whatever size you want.
Yeah,
You can put it up on your wall if you want to take your phone and show it.
yeah.
Like all that stuff is like, ooh, you know.
Yeah, it's
So,
nice to have the features. Like, and it's so funny because you sent me on a flashback there with the webmaster, right? Like there's a word that you don't see anymore.
right.
Contact webmaster, whatever. That's such a throwback. It's amazing. But yeah, it's you've got a lot to learn in terms of modern day marketing and getting attention, but you were so far ahead above half because you're not scared of the camera. You were an actor and you're a natural communicator. If you put that to work, you have no idea how quickly you're going to get there. Like I got to give you a list of like mandatory tactics to start working on, but
Sure.
if blanket statements, right? All photographers love hiding behind the lens. Most artists love hiding behind the canvas. They don't want to be outward. They don't want to share on social media. They don't want to give a window into their world. All they want to do is post their work, never anything. We're the creative inspiration from the work. And it just doesn't come natural to most of them, right? And so it places you in a unicorn zone where you're good at that and you're natural at that. Most are not, right? And don't want to do that. And like, Patrick, I'm not going to post what I had for lunch yesterday on social media. You don't have to post what you had for lunch yesterday. No one cares. We just want a little window into your world, who you are, what makes you tick,
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. And like I said, most people have to tell me to stop talking.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dial it down. You're
Yeah.
so much.
you got so much fun stuff to do. And like the whole thing about it is like, it's just attention arbitrage, right? And like, I always challenge my listeners, because I'll do this myself, is I'll go walk the dog. Okay. And I will not take this with me. Okay. I will leave it, not taking it. And then I will walk around the neighborhood and see how many scenarios I encounter where somebody's walking with their phone, where somebody's pushing a stroller and looking at their phone, where somebody's driving and not looking at what they're doing and looking at their phone, where a construction worker's pausing and looking at their phone. And there's a couple of takeaways from that. One, that we're on our phones too much, obviously, but two, you have to learn how to storytell on this. You just have to. It's got nothing to do with social media. It just has to do with where everyone's eyeballs are 24 hours a day, and it's on this thing,
Yeah, it really is. It's a blessing and a curse. I see people on dates. I'm like, you're on your phone. You're on a date. You're supposed to like start a relationship based on what,
Yes, that's so weird. Look, married for over 10 years or multiple children, fine. You do the phone thing. But if that's a first date or a 10th date, or like, no way, too early, right? Too early. Advice that you would give your just getting started out of college artist self.
Just getting out of college, like back when I was in college?
Yeah.
Well, I've said, paint what you love. Pick a genre, a subject that's going to get you up in the morning and keep you late doing it. So that's one thing. Another thing is just like, and I'm just discovering this now at 60 years old, I'm loving the paintings that I'm doing right now, because for the first time, I'm taking my time. I'm slowing down. I'm really, when you're in that climbing, I'm trying to establish myself, and the publisher is saying, dude, you got to bang out 12 of these because I got a calendar waiting. There's this natural impulse to just rush.
Mm-hmm.
And to like say, well, I got the main part that I wanted real good, so who cares about the background, or who cares about balance and symmetry, and all of the different parts of art that make stuff good and sellable and stuff. And so now I'm really taking my time and saying, hey, if I don't finish today or Friday or whatever, and I don't have an art director from wherever standing over my shoulder going, that's
today.
Not me, or whatever. Nobody's art directing me. It's me painting the way I like, what I want. And I'm really taking my time and making sure I'm not going to show you if I don't endorse it. Like if I don't say, well, I should say my daughter, my son, and my wife are kind of my final, acceptance. Yeah. They're my quality control. So just love it. Be grateful, paint what you want. And you know what? You're constantly morphing. Be a little bit pliable, if that's a word, as an artist, say like, you know what, my instinct is to paint in this way, but maybe I will try to loosen up and, be a little freer with, whatever, or maybe I will, try different things. And don't say, well, that's taking away from, from who I am as a creative. Hey, there's no formula, and trends and styles and everything and color schemes and all that, they change. You got to be like Madonna. You got to be like the Beatles. They were only a band for like 8 years, and you look at what they looked like and what their music sounded like, when they were doing Love Me Do, and then, Helter Skelter, you go, whoa, wow, why did they change? They were so good.
Yeah.
Because they just did. They just felt it. They just did whatever they had to do, So I would just say, go with the flow, be true, but also be a little bit patient and be a little bit willing to kind of play around with it. That would be, I guess, my advice. And get with smart people, because everybody needs a mentor. Michael Jordan, he had mentors, and all of them have a coach. Everybody has a coach.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I love that advice. I love it. And then I'm biased, so we have to wrap up with thoughts on AI broadly. And then, have you used it at all? Have you tried a ChatGPT? Have you tried a Claude? Have you tried a Grok? Put in some questions.
I have. First of all, I do not dabble. I love the stock market, and I have a lot of investment in AI. So part of me says yes AI, and part of me goes no AI.
Yeah.
I think the potential is crazy. Like, what I don't love is, like, people creating artwork that's just a kind of literally a push of a button type of thing.
Yeah.
I love getting paint on my hands. You can always tell when I've been painting. I paint all on my hands.
Yeah.
I love, not saying you have to be old school. There are a lot of brilliant, graphic designers and digital artists, and that's all well and good. But don't cheat the process, and don't cheat the artists that are truly creative and truly doing it with their humanity and their heart and their soul. Don't just I figured out how to touch that and I can sell 1 million of these, type of thing. That part I don't like that.
Yeah.
But again, we're using technology not just in AI, but that no one ever would have dreamed about even 50 years ago. So I just do me.
Yeah.
I had chances. I had art directors saying to me, Scott, you're going to lose your spot here in this job because everything's kind of going computer. And unless you sit down and you really learn how to do all that stuff, Photoshop and Illustrator and Quark and all of the things.
Yeah.
And you know what? I walked away, Patrick. I said, you know what? I do old school. That's what I love. That's what I do. I draw and I paint.
Yeah.
So that's just me, and if people said literally you will not make another penny the rest of your life if you continue to do old school, then okay, well then I'll do it for myself. I'll go in my studio, and my relatives and my friends will still like it and want it, so because they like me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take on AI. It's just there's nothing I can do or say that's ever going to change the course of that entity. It's like its own thing. So
it is, yeah, and you can't control it. I'm a huge advocate. I don't wade into the art created by it or use it to create your art or any of that, because that's just, I don't even want that argument. But I love it in the sense that all interview 100,000 artists. How many out of the 100,000 have even one employee? The answer. It's less than 1/10 of 1%, almost none, right? And that's the nature of the creators. They're solopreneurs. They don't have huge teams. That's really, really hard, right? In as much as the ones that don't have the octopus going on, which is the majority, right? That aren't teaching in a digital capacity or doing other things, like just truly selling the art. And I think one of the greatest promises of AI is, for once, you have the team member that's willing and switched on and ready to work at any point in time to help you with all of the things that you hate doing, whatever it is. And it could be media updates, it could be the titles, it could be thinking things through, coming up with a marketing strategy, like all the things that never get done. And I everything an artist creates, and people do not like the factory analogy, but for me, it's a widget factory, right? All the marketing you do, all the emails you send, all the shows that you go to, all the face-to-face time, all the co-op galleries, that's just your widget factory, right? And all of those things represent an output. And that output is the GDP of your business, right? Like this is the GDP of Scott Westmoreland's business in this last year. All of these events that he did, everything, that's what it is. You can't clone yourself. It's you. So to the extent that AI comes in and gets you to ship additional widgets, that means the art gets in front of more eyeballs, more people know who you are, you have more conversations, you're taking more commissions, whatever it is. I just like that trajectory for artists. And I think there's great promise there.
No doubt. Absolutely. And everything's a process. And you might interview me again 6 months from now, and I'll be like, I love it. I love everything about it. It's changed my life. So you know what? I'm just a baby in that capacity. So I would love to, people who have that information like you and, your company, what I can do.
Yeah.
So I'm all ears,
I love it. He's open to it. He's open to it. Huge thanks for the time. We're coming up on an hour, which the stream thing will shut off. So you guys, we will wrap that up there. I will put links to Scott's website, to his new Instagram account, which he's just started recently, right? And he needs some followers. He needs some love on there. So give him a follow. All of that will be in the show notes everywhere. If you're listening to this later, it'll be in the show notes there. If you're going to watch it on YouTube or you just watched part of it, go to YouTube, or it'll be saved on Instagram too. And all the data will be in there. And really appreciate you. Thank you for the time. And we might have to do this again in 6 months where I just turn him into the absolute AI madman marketing machine.
Well, I appreciate you too, man. And let's do lunch because you're a neighbor. I'll be there in 10 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. We're way too close not to. On that note, thanks for listening and watching, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on a future episode. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.